Okay, so let's go ahead and start. So this was the schedule indicated in the announcement I sent the week before Independent Learning Week. Um, excuse me. The month of July went so quickly by because we were only able to meet 3 times because of all of the holidays as well as the um leap that happened on Thursdays. But basically, ideally, you should have watched lectures 1 and 2 by now, because again, we have quiz 1 for module 3 scheduled for today. Now, after that, I hope that everybody can take the time to watch lecture 3 if you haven't done so already. And then on Thursday, we'll have our face-to-face meetings again. And then after that, watch lecture 4. And then you'll have your second quiz on July 14. And then our third long exam is scheduled for July 17. So it's a pretty straightforward module. Now, population ecology, despite a lot of math, is one of my favorites because it's linked to my specialization, which is population genetics, at least in the field of genetics, no? So when we look at population ecology, it's actually the branch of ecology that um, zooms in on the different dynamics of populations within a specific environment. So it examines how populations of organisms of a specific species, no, change over time and space. And it also looks at how factors surrounding that population can influence their growth, their survival, and their interactions with other species. My favorite aspect of population ecology is like, para kang manghuhula. You're almost like a wizard trying to predict the future because you look at trends that are present in the past in order to make predictions of what the future will be for that species. And this is particularly important because if you're an environmental manager, if you're a mayor, a governor, anyone in the executive, if you're the future DOH secretary, the future DepEd secretary, and so on, you need to know what will happen to the population that you're supposed to be focused on para makapag-allot ka ng tamang resources sa kanila. Hindi yung naghihintay ka na lang na, okay, dumami pala yung grade 6, ngayon lang tayo mag-a-allot ng pera. Hindi pwedeng ganun. Dapat kaya mong ma-predict based on trends para laging handa yung situation mo. And that's what we that's what we mean when we say we want science-based policy. Yung ginagamit natin kung ano yung meron tayo para parang hindi laging shocked yung mga politicians natin na, hala, hindi nyo talaga alam na ganyan yung mangyayari. Eh, matagal nang sinasabi sa inyo ng mga scientists yan. Okay, so yun. Now, what are some of the key aspects of population ecology? So, medyo marami siya, no? Daanan lang natin because at least I think by now you're becoming aware of how ecology is not a memorization class. I mean, you do have to memorize some formula, but it's more of an analysis class. So, one of the major aspects of population ecology, kasama dyan ang population size at density. Kadalasan nako-confuse siya ng mga tao, lalo na ng mga estudyante. When we say population size, yan yung total number ng individuals na makikita sa isang population. So, pwede siyang maapektuhan ng birth, death, immigration, at emigration. Okay? So, population density naman is yung dami ng individuals per unit area or per unit volume. So, area pag sa lupa, volume pag sa dagat or sa kahit anong body of water. Kasi syempre, ang mga isda, they occupy 3-dimensional space, no? Mga jellyfish, mga ganon. Tayo, sa lupa, medyo flat, kaya per area tayo. Pero pag sa lawa, sa ilog, sa dagat, per volume. So, ang density, kaya siya tinitignan, kadalasan more than size, is because it can influence competition, it can influence predation, and also disease spread. Pag mas maraming population density sa isang area, ibig sabihin masiksikan yung mga organisms. And so, kung merong bagay na madaling ipasa from one organism to the other, whether it's food or disease, mas mabilis siyang kumalat. Kaya kung titignan nyo nung nag-aaral ang mga tao ng, ano ba tawag doon, ng COVID-19, mas tinitingnan ng population density kesa population size lang. Okay. By the way, if you have any questions or points of clarification, please don't hesitate to raise your hand and unmute and magtanong lang po, no? So don't be shy to interrupt me. And sayang din, class participation points. Dahil may pasok na ulit, pwede na po tayo ulit pumawi doon. Okay, next, we have population growth. So when we talk about population growth, pagdating sa ecology, merong usually dalawang general na ways by which populations can grow. There's exponential and there's logistic. Tama ba? Yeah, logistical. Minsan pagkakagaling mo sa pag-organize ng events, logistics sounds different, but it actually is another term that refers to a kind of growth. So when we say exponential growth, kadalasan nangyayari to when resources are abundant and the population grows rapidly. So makikita natin siya kadalasan sa mga bacteria. Later on, magkakaroon tayo ng opportunity na mapakita ko sa inyo kung ano ang itsura ng exponential growth. Ang logistic growth naman is kadalasang nakikita natin pag merong limits yung environment. So kunwari, limited yung food o kaya limited yung space. So in this case, mas mabagal ang population growth. Kaya usually dinidescribe ang logistic growth as S-shaped. Kasi merong carrying capacity, kaya nagpa-flat siya over time. So again, papakita ko rin sa inyo yan later. Now, the third key aspect is carrying capacity, usually referred to as K kasi nagamit na yung C. So ito yung maximum population size na pwedeng masuportahan ng isang environment. Kasi syempre, finite, so hindi infinite, finite na uubos ang maraming resources katulad ng food, ng shelter, ng water. So ideally, if a population exceeds the carrying capacity of its environment, tataas yung mortality rate o kaya bababa yung reproduction rate. So, kaya magandang tinitignan yung carrying capacity. Then there's survival and mortality. So they go hand in hand. You've probably encountered this in evolutionary ecology already. So we look at survival rates when we want to see how many people or how many organisms can survive particular environmental challenges. And then, yung partner niya, so they always complement each other, no? Survival rate and mortality rate. They usually also say the same thing. Pero tinitingnan natin ang survival rate pag optimistic tayo, pag gusto nating makita gaano karami ang nabubuhay. Whereas, kung gusto naman nating makita yung negative impact ng isang condition, tinitingnan natin yung mortality, gaano karami yung namamatay. Very, very, hindi siya ginagamit ng sabay, kasi yun nga, pareho sila basically ng sinasabi, survival and mortality, redundant sila sa isa't isa. So, pipili ka lang nung isa sa kanila para ma-highlight mo yung gusto mong ma-highlight. And again, survival, if you want to focus on characteristics of the population that allow them to be strong, to be fit, whereas we use mortality to see the negative impact of a situation or environmental change to the populations that we have. A fifth, we have reproduction. So, kung tatandaan nyo sa evolutionary ecology module natin, ang fitness ay hindi nag-end sa survival. Kailangan makapag-reproduce ka rin para ma-transfer mo yung genes mo to the next generation. So, reproductive strategies, they play a big role in population ecology. Kasi depende sa evolution ng organism, merong mga species na magpo-produce ng konting offspring, pa isa-isa, pa dalawa-dalawa lang yung pag-anak, pero mataas yung tinatawag nating parental investment. Inaalagaan ng magulang yung anak. You can see that in our species, but also in elephants, in deer, in a lot of mammals actually. Pero meron ding mga species naman na nagpo-produce ng maraming anak, pero wala silang pakialam sa anak nila pag pinanganak na. So makikita natin yun sa fish. So yung Finding Nemo, medyo fake news yun. Kasi usually, ang mga fish pag nanganak, babantayan nila sa start, pero eventually, wala na rin. Yung crabs, yung mangrove crabs na inaaral namin, they produce many offspring, pero hindi sila masyadong nag invest sa parental care. So, parehong strategy yan that ensures survival, of course, in different environmental conditions. Yung sixth, syempre, we do not live in a vacuum. Hindi naman tayo lang yung nag exist sa ecosystem natin. Maraming species na nagko-coexist, kaya nagkakaroon ng communities sa iba't ibang ecosystems. So, there are interactions sa population. So, merong competition. So, pag merong mga species na pareho or magkaiba yung niche, hindi, pag pareho yung niche nila, sorry, mas magko-compete sila for limited resources and pwede niyang ma-affect yung population growth. Meron ding predation and herbivory. Pag ikaw yung kinakain or ikaw yung kumakain ng ibang species dun sa ecosystem, kung paano yung population growth ng species mo, maapektuhan nun yung population growth ng ibang species. But of course, hindi lang naman puro negative yung impact ng iba't ibang species sa isa't isa. Meron ding syempre mutualism and cooperation. So species can still interact beneficially at masuportahan ang survival at reproduction ng isa't isa. For example, bees, ang mga bubuyog, are essential pollinators for a lot of flowering plants. And so they have to coexist in a mutualistic manner. 7, dispersal. This is a term we use to refer to yung movement ng mga individuals away from their birth sites to other locations. So, ang dispersal, lalo na sa plants, no, can influence genetic diversity, competition, and the expansion of a population into new areas. So, important siya kasi syempre, hindi naman pwedeng lahat ng offspring ng isang organism, dun pa rin sa location nila titira, lalo na kung marami sila mag-anak. The offspring can also be used to colonize other locations. And then there's also life history strategies. So this refers to which developmental stage of an organism has a higher or lower chance of survival. So for example, there are what you call R-selected species that focus on rapid reproduction with many offspring. Pero meron ding K-selected that focus on fewer offspring with greater care and longer lifespans. So we'll have a chance to talk more about that later. And then there's also, of course, human impact. Napakarami nating ginagawa na nakaka-benefit pero also nakakasira din ng mga ecosystems. So, but right now, because of late-stage capitalism, overpopulation, and so on, a lot of the activities that we do end up causing habitat destruction, pollution, and of course, climate change. Although climate change is a natural phenomenon, the climate change we're experiencing now, the evidence is pointing that we are definitely aggravating it, pinapalala natin siya. And so all of these things can drastically affect populations of different species, even our own species, leading to declines, pagbabago ng distribution, nawawala sa ibang lugar, lumilipat sa kabila, or even the extinction of species. So, dumadami na yung mga ganyang event. So, isa sa mga pinaka-powerful tools ng isang population ecologist ay ang life table. So, nasimulan nyo na yan sa lab. Medyo nakaka-traumatize siya sa daming eco-compute. Kaya I understand, I feel you. But yun nga, napaka-importante niya, no? It's a fundamental tool. Kasi nakakatulong siya sa atin para maintindihan yung dynamics na nangyayari sa population over time. And usually people listen to numbers more than to qualitative descriptors. So life tables allows us to see how individuals in a population are likely to survive and reproduce at different ages or stages of life. So, ano-ano ba yung mga importanteng aspect ng life tables? So, una yung survival rate. So, nabanggit ko rin yung survival kanina when we were talking about key aspects of population ecology. So, pagdating sa survival rates at sa life tables, makikita natin yung survival rates at different life stages. So, childhood, middle age, late stage, and so on. So, makikita natin which stages of life are most critical pag titignan na natin kung lumalaki o lumiliit ba ang isang population. And then titignan din natin ang reproductive rates. So kaya kasi nating matrack yung birth rates at reproduction across different age groups. And nakakatulong din itong i-predict kung gaano kabilis ang population growth or population decline. So essential siya para maintindihan yung reproductive strategies ng iba't ibang species. And then syempre, pakialam talaga natin population growth. Nag-overpopulate na ba ang isang species or isang population? And usually ginagawa to by incorporating both survival and reproductive data. Magagamit natin siya para ma-estimate ang population growth or decline over a specific time frame. So, importante yan for conservation o kaya yung management ng endangered species o kaya kung paano naman natin kinokontrol ang mga invasive species. Nagagamit din natin ng life tables para makita ang age structure. Pag sinabi nating age structure, it shows kung gaano karaming individuals are in each age class. So this can indicate the stability o kaya vulnerability ng mga population. And then, of course, in a practical sense, importante ang life tables for resource management kasi depende sa sinasabing data ng life table, yung mga decisions natin can affect wild or kaya farmed populations. So, pwede niyang ma-impluwensyahan yung ating harvesting strategies, protection efforts, o kaya habitat restoration. And then, of course, we can use life tables to compare the life history of different species or populations at maipapakita how factors like environmental conditions or life strategies affect survival and reproduction. Okay. So, unahin muna natin yung static life tables kasi yung iba't ibang factors na na-describe ko, nag-a-apply siya sa iba't ibang uri ng life tables. Pero simulan natin sa static kasi yan yung isa sa mga pinaka-straightforward at yun nga, dun sa mga nakapag-lab na or nagla-lab ngayon, yan yung kino-compute nyo sa laboratory. So, a static or period life table, pag binubuo natin siya, gumagamit tayo ng data from a specific time period rather than tracking a real cohort over time. Kasi may mga life tables na the moment manganak yung isang batch, susundan mo sila hanggang mamatay. Hindi yun yung ginagawa natin. Pag static life table, gumagamit tayo ng data na meron sa isang specific period of time. So meron siyang 7 key assumptions. The first is that our population is stationary. So we assume that the population size and age distribution remain constant over time. Meaning, yung dami ng birth ay equal sa dami ng namamatay. So birth equal death. And migration is negligible. So this assumption, although again, it doesn't apply for all populations, but this assumption allows for easier computation of person years lived and total years remaining. Yung second assumption natin is that there is constant age-specific mortality rates. So this means that the death probabilities at each age, they accurately reflect the real risk for that time period. Kahit na may mga actual cohorts na nakaka-experience ng iba't ibang mortality rates. Kaya kadalasan, ang static life table, pang short periods of time lang siya. Ginagawa siya pag may pandemic, o kaya pag biglang may economic boom, o kaya pag may recession. So, kasi nga, ina-assume niya na constant yung mortality rate for each age group. Third, ina-assume niya na yung mga individuals ay nananatili, nagsistay lang sila dun sa location kung saan sila pinanganak, and yung population ay hindi naaapektuhan ng immigration or emigration. Kaya nga super perfect siya for the COVID-19 pandemic kasi 'di ba, wala halos taong nakakapag-travel. So this ensures that yung observed deaths and population at risk, representative sila ng buong cohort. Fourth assumption, yung life tables natin, they model a large population size. So it's a hypothetical cohort that's typically about 100,000 births. Sa computation natin, medyo ina-allow na natin yung 1,000. Pero para maging accurate talaga ang life tables, you have to have 100,000 individuals dun sa cohort mo. And so it progresses through life stages based on observed mortality rates. So again, ang tandaan po natin, pagdating sa static life tables, we do not track people over time. We look at them at a snapshot in time. So hindi natin binabantayan na pinanganak sila, tas over time, sila pa rin. Kung sino lang yung available sa maliit na time period na ito. So it does not reflect future changes in mortality trends. Fifth, pag yung deaths, no? Pag nagko-compute tayo ng person years lived, ina-assume natin na yung deaths within an age interval, nag-occur sila evenly throughout the interval. So this has assumptions in the computations that we create later. And then sixth, the oldest age group experiences complete mortality. So pag po ini-interpret natin ang static life tables, makikita niyo po talaga na the older the age group, the shorter their life expectancy. So wag niyo na pong sabihin yan na, miss, ang nakita po namin habang tumatanda, umiiksi ang buhay. Ay malamang, kasi nga, ang, ang assumption natin, the older you are, the closer you are to death. So you don't have to tell us that. Ang important sa life tables is pag nagko-compare ka ng dalawang populations, masasabi mo na, yes, miss, pag 80 years old ka na, malapit ka nang mamatay, pero pag nakatira ka dito, may chance na mas mabuhay ka pa ng 1 to 2 years longer. Yun yung important sa kanya, no? Na between the two populations, ano yung difference sa life expectancy nila? Kasi nga, ang assumption ng static life table is that the last age group is assumed to experience 100% mortality. Meaning, lahat ng tao na nasa age group na yon ay mamamatay within that age interval. So, bawal na merong vampire dun sa population natin. And then finally, the last assumption, survivorship follows a continuous decline. So, linked siya sa 6. So the numbers of individuals surviving to an older age group decreases smoothly according to observed mortality patterns. So normally sa isang static life table, wala tayong makikitang abrupt jumps. And na-ensure niya na yung calculations for life expectancy and cumulative lived years are meaningful. Okay. So, pagdating sa isang static life table, makikita nyo sa screen yung iba't ibang elements na nilalagay natin dun sa table. So, bago natin simulang i-dissect bawat isa. And by the way, some of you might want to take a screen cap of this just in case it comes up in an assessment, in lab, or in our upcoming long exam. One thing that you might want to remember is ang unit ng static life table ay person years. So hindi lang siya years, no? It's person dash years. So it's a unit of measurement that represents the total amount of time that a group of people contributes to a study or a population over a given period. So, kino-combine niya yung number ng tao at yung duration kung saan sila inobserve. So, isang example ng person years calculation, sige, let's say, ano ba? We're tracking a population over time. So, if 100 people are followed for 1 year, they contribute 100 person years. If 50 people are followed for 2 years, they also contribute 100 person years. And then if 200 people are followed for, let's say, half a year, they also contribute to 100 person years. So ang person years na unit, dami ng tao, times number of years na binantayan natin sila. So when we say person years, they provide a way to measure the exposure to risk or time spent in a given state of a population. Okay? So I hope you've gone through, I hope you've saved the slide kasi hindi ko na siya iisa-isahin. Instead, we'll go through some examples of how to compute static life tables. So let me just switch to an Excel sheet. Hala, baka sagot na nung Excel sheet yung nakikita. Wait lang. Okay, hindi naman. Okay, Excel. Ay, tama ba to? Wait lang. Stop share. Application windows. Okay, share. Ayan nga. Okay, so can you give me a thumbs up reaction if you can see my Excel sheet? Okay. So this is, lakihan natin ng konti. Hala, ano nangyari? Oh, I made a new sheet. Lakihan ko lang ng konti para madaling makita. Okay, so let me just do a quick demonstration of how to compute for life expectancies using an Excel sheet. Medyo unfair to, sabihin ko na, kasi i-demonstrate ko siya sa inyo gamit ang Excel, which is gagamitin nyo naman talaga sa lab, pero pagdating sa exam, bawal ang computer. So, ngayon pa lang, i-warn ko na kayo na kailangan nyong mag-practice na gawin ito ng walang Excel sheet. Okay, so kailangan ma-memorize nyo siya kung paano nyo siya i-compute. So, a very typical life table will start by giving the age class and the number of individuals alive for that age group. So, that's N sub X. Para ma-compute nyo yung D sub X, isusubtract nyo yung N sub X, so yung dami ng buhay for that age group, tapos yung dami dun sa susunod na age group. So, 1,000 minus 801. So, yun yung number dying. So, gagawin niyo ulit siya sa susunod. So, para malaman yung D sub X ng age class 1 to 2, 801 minus 789. So, pwede niyo siyang gawin manually. And yun nga, pagdating sa exam, mano-mano niyo siyang gagawin. Pero ang kagandahan sa Excel, pwede niyo siyang i-copy-paste. As long as sure kayo na tama yung pag-copy-paste nyo. Okay, so sorry, may cheat sheet ako. Ayan. So once nagawa nyo na yun, meron na kayong D sub X, yung dami ng namatay. Now, if you want to know the proportion surviving, which is basically the survival rate, you divide the number alive, the number of individuals alive during that stage, divided by the number of individuals who were born for that cohort, which is basically yung dami ng pinanganak sa age class 0 to 1. So that's why yung unang-unang value ng proportion surviving ng L sub X ay 1. Tapos, para ma-copy-paste nyo to, pwede nyong lagyan ng dollar signs yung denominator. So, parehong yung letter tsaka yung number. Kasi sa Excel, ang presence ng dollar signs mean hindi to pwedeng umalis sa letter B at hindi to pwedeng umalis sa number 5. So, pag kinopy-paste ko siya, ang mangyayari is yung numerator na walang dollar sign, susunod siya dun sa susunod na row, 801. Pero yung denominator, kasi may dollar sign siya, magsistay siya sa B5. So, tingnan natin ulit kung mangyayari siya dito sa third row. So, yan. So, 789 divided by 1,000. So, ibig sabihin, pwede natin siyang i-copy-paste sa lahat. Okay. So, now that we have proportion surviving, again, that's survival rate, pwede natin ngayon tignan yung mortality. Wait lang ha, check ko lang ulit kung tama pa yung ginagawa ko. Okay, tama naman. So, ang mortality rate ay D sub X, so dami ng namatay, divided by dami ng buhay for that age group. Okay? So, ito mas straightforward, dami ng patay sa dami ng buhay for that age group. So, mas mabilis siyang i-copy-paste. Okay. Ang mapapansin niyo naman sa mortality rate, pagdating sa pinakamatandang age class, 100% namamatay. Kasi again, yun ang assumptions ng static life table. Pag nasa last age group na tayo, mamamatay lahat. Okay. Now, pagdating naman sa average number alive in an age class, so ina-average natin yung pag-transition from one age group to another. So it's this one, yung katapat mo, tas yung susunod, divided by 2. Okay? So again, yung katapat mo plus yung susunod na age group divided by 2. So madali rin siyang i-copy-paste. Okay, let me just check kung tama pa. Parang may mali akong ginawa. B18 plus B9. Okay? Huh? Yun naman talaga. Ay, mali. N sub X kasi, see, tingnan nyo, teacher nyo, nagkakamali. Confusing talaga siya. Yung N pala dapat ang kino-confer ko, yung N, which is yung una. So, number ng buhay sa age group na tinitingnan nyo, plus yung number ng buhay sa susunod na age group, divided by 2. Kasi nagbabasa. Sorry. Ayan, tama na siya. Ngayon, ang susunod naman is total number of person years lived beyond age X. So, gaano mo mape-predict yung lalampas ng buhay after you've lived through that age? So, ito, mas madali ditong nagsisimula sa ilalim kesa sa taas. Actually, yun talaga yung recommendation. Kasi, pag nasa ilalim ka, magsa-start ka sa 1.5, yung susunod is, itong number na to na nasa ilalim mo, plus 4.5. Tapos, ganun ulit, 6 plus 51. So, ganun siya kino-compute, no? 1.5, 6, 57. Tama. So, pwede mo rin itong i-copy-paste, pero again, magsisimula ka sa ilalim. So, 57 plus 174, it's 231. 231 plus 345.5, it's 57.6.5. Tapos, once meron ka ng T sub X, okay, ang gagawin mo is, i-divide mo siya. So, T sub X divided by N sub X times the number of years in a cohort. So, ito, 0 to 1. So, isang taon lang yung lumipas. So, times 1. 1 to 2, 1 year lang ang lumipas. So, times 1. So, multiply lang natin siya. Yan. So, pareho ba? Pareho. Ngayon, pagdating sa life expectancy, kailangan ba natin ng sobrang daming decimal points? Ang sagot ay hindi. Kasi, paano mo measure ang 0.059 person years? Di ba ang hirap? So, ang important lang sa atin dito, siguro ay isang decimal point. So, 7.1. So, 7.1 years. So, 0.1 year. So, 12 times 0.1. Siguro that's a little bit longer than 1 month. So, makikita nyo kung gaano pa katagal mabubuhay ang isang organism in this period pag nagtuloy-tuloy yung environment na yon. So, basically, kung titingnan nyo tong species na ito, normally kaya nilang mabuhay until 14 years old. Pero in the environment where this data was taken, pag pinanganak ka sa taon na to, 7 years ka na lang mabubuhay. Siguro naging mas harsh yung environment, baka mas kumonte yung pagkain, baka merong sakit, kaya naging ganun. And kung 14 years old ka na, 6 na buwan na lang most likely ang buhay mo. So yun yung isa sa mga pinaka-useful na characteristics ng isang static life table. Okay? So try naman natin dito. So try ko ulit palakihan. I'll give you siguro a couple of minutes to try and compute the life expectancy for this one. Siguro para may sign na alam nyo na yung sagot, just raise your hand. The only number you need to tell me is the life expectancy at the first age group. Okay, so siguro let's give you a few minutes to try and compute for this one. And then again, whoever gives the first 3 answers will get class participation points for today. And also, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. But go ahead, please practice with this life table. Normally, dapat after 3 minutes, meron na kayong na-compute. Remember, sa lecture, you only have 90 minutes to answer a 65-question exam. But anyway, no pressure for now. But the goal here is to practice doing the computations so that you can do it as quickly and as accurately as possible in a short period of time. So I'll wait 2 more minutes before revealing the answer. Pero yun, the time boundness of this activity is a very real thing. Yeah. Okay, so that's 5 minutes. I received the message in the chat, although ideally, sasabihin nyo na lang siya out loud. 35.3 daw. So let's see if that's right. Okay, let's go. So again, you start with nx minus nx plus 1. Same for this one. 801 minus 789. But again, hindi nyo siya kailangan gawing manually. Pwede nyo siyang i-copy, paste. Ito, pwede rin i-copy paste pero mas maselan. So, nx divided by yung n nung pinanganak. So, the n should always be the first one. So, kailangan yung lagyan ng dollar sign sa simula ng letter at sa simula ng number. Bago nyo siya i-copy paste. Okay. Ito, d sub x, dami ng namatay, divided by dami ng buhay for that age group. Again, pwede ring i-copy-paste. Ito, nx plus nx plus 1 divided by 2. Pwede rin natin i-copy-paste. Okay. And then ito, mas maganda kung galing sa ibaba. So, magsa-start sa 1.5. And then, i-add nyo yung nasa baba, saka yung nasa left. Again, ang i-add, nasa baba, tas yung nasa left. Pwede rin siyang i-copy-paste pataas. Then, ito na, yung e sub x, yung life expectancy, equals capital T sub x divided by n sub x times number of years in the cohort. So, 0 to 5. So, that's about 5 years. So, times 5. And then, copy-paste, pababa. And then, i-adjust natin yung decimal point. So, 35.3. Good job. So, Zell was able to get it right. 35.3 for this one. Okay, so this is what you do if ang given ay n sub x. Paano kung ang given ay yung dami ng namatay instead? Kasi pwede rin yun. Instead na d sub x. So, pag dami ng namatay yung binigay, gagamitin nyo siya para malaman kung gaano karami yung nabuhay. So, ang gagawin nyo dito is similar sa pag-compute natin ng t sub x. Magsisimula tayo sa ibaba, tapos paakyat. So, bottom plus left. Again, bottom plus left. Tapos pwede nyo siyang i-copy, paste. Okay, again, ganyan ang gagawin pag yung d sub x yung pinigay. So, check ko lang. 3, 1,000 dapat yung nasa taas. Okay. So, once na-figure out nyo yung n sub x, pwede na natin gawin yung rest ng mas katulad pa rin ng dati. So, again, number of surviving, n sub x divided by yung dami ng pinanganak. Don't forget the dollar sign. Okay. Then copy-paste, pababa. And then, mortality rate, ganun pa rin. Number ng namatay, pero tandaan nyo, nandun na siya sa first column, or basically the second column, divided by dami ng buhay at that time. Then, paste. Person years alive. Again, kailangan nyo lang tandaan, nasan si n sub x. So, tamang labeling lang to, lagi. Okay, then copy-paste. And then, for t sub x, simulan ulit natin sa baba. Bottom plus left. So that's usually one of the most confusing parts. But once you remember that, should be straightforward. And then again, pag e sub x na equals capital T sub x divided by n sub x, tandaan niyo kung nasan siya, times number of years in the cohort, 0 to 5. So this is about 5 years, 35.3. Okay, so, ayan. Wow, naka-auto format na siya. So, kilala na niya ako. So, ayan, 35.3. So, pag number of deaths ang given or number of dying, tandaan nyo, gagamitin nyo yung number of deaths to derive yung number alive. So, this is particularly important kasi pagdating sa pag-analyze ng data from pandemics like COVID-19, number of death yung binibigay. Pero pag nagbabasa kayo ng textbook, usually it's number alive that's given. Okay? Pero meron pang isa. But wait, there's more. May isa pang way. Oops, kumuha na naman ako ng bagong form. May isa pang way para paguluhin siya. Paano kung yung L sub x yung given? So kung L sub x ang given, it's the proportion surviving. It's the survival rate. What do? You assume that there is an infinitely large population. So, ang classic niyan is 100,000. Pero 1,000 can also be used. 1 million can also be used. Kung ano man yung number na pinakamabilis para sa inyo. So ako, I prefer to use 100,000 para lagi kong matatandaan na in static life tables, the ideal number of cases is 100,000. So if that's what you have, you basically just multiply the L sub x, the survival rate, with 100,000 to get N sub x. So copy paste. So again, equals number surviving times 100,000. So you assume na meron tayo ng 100,000 na population. So once you have that, okay, so meron ka ng N sub x, pwede mo nang i-compute si number of dying. 100,000 minus 80,100. So, tuloy-tuloy lang, 80,100 minus 78,900. Again, copy-paste. So, meron ka na ng number dying, pwede mo nang i-compute si mortality rate, death divided by those alive, copy-paste. Okay, and then, for capital L sub x, again, tandaan nyo yung n, yung kailangan natin dito. Hala, nangyari? Equals n plus 1 divided by 2. Pwedeng i-copy-paste. Pag t sub x, magsisimula sa ilalim. 150 ilalim plus kaliwa. And then copy-paste. And then finally, pag e sub x na, open parenthesis, t sub x divided by n sub x. Number of years in cohort, 0 to 4, 5 to 9. So, pag ganito ba, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, ano ang multiplier natin? So, kanina kasi, 0 to 5, 5 to 10. Pansin nyo? 0 to 5, 5 to 10. Ito, 0 to 4, 5 to 9. Hindi sila nag-overlap. So, anong ibig sabihin nun? I-multiply ko ba siya by 4 or by 5? Pag hindi nag-overlap yung age class, ito 0 to 4, 5 to 9, ang bilang natin is per year. Meaning 0 is one age, so kakapanganak. 1 is another age. 2 is another age. 3 is another age. And then 4 is another age. So ang ages natin is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's why pag ganito yung pagkasulat ng age class, it's still times 5. Okay? So, copy-paste. Yan. Pero, pag 0 to 5, 5 to 10, you can see nag-overlap sila. Ang bilang natin ng age group is yung transition. So, ang isa is 0 to 1, that's 1. 1 to 2, that's 2. 2 to 3, that's 3. 3 to 4, that's 4. And then 4 to 5, that's 5. So, babantayan nyo rin kung paano sinulat yung age class para malaman nyo yung number of years in cohort. When overlapping, you count based on transition. 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. If non-overlapping yung age class, you count based on the numbers only. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? So those are the examples that I have for static life tables. We will be moving forward to parameters describing populations for the next 20 minutes or so. Any questions or points of clarification so far? Okay, so if none, let's go back to our lesson. So okay, here we go. Okay, so parameters describing populations. So this mostly refers to I think the recording of lecture 2. So again, another opportunity for people to get class participation. If nobody gives an answer, I will not answer this question also. So once I read out the question, I'll give a 10-second countdown for those who know the answer. Don't hesitate to raise your hand, okay? So one of the things that was described in, I think, pre-recorded video 1 or 2 is that population density was not appropriate for single species patch forming corals. So ano daw, bakit daw yun yung reason? If you remember Sir Al's lecture, bakit hindi pwedeng gamitin ang population density when we're talking about single species patch forming corals? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Okay, Miggy, go ahead.
Hi po, Doc. Try lang po.
Go ahead.
I think po it's because these patch forming corals are what we call as clonal organisms, which means that they produce modules which make it difficult po to distinguish them from each other. Such modules po, for instance, uh, are connected po by living tissue. And yun nga po, it's kind of difficult po to distinguish among each other. So it's not appropriate to use population density for corals po.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Miggy. So Miggy gets class participation points for today. So Miggy is correct. When we use population density, if you remember from the earlier parts of this lecture, we count the number of individuals living in a particular area or a particular volume. But that means we need to have the ability to count each individual. Pagdating kasi sa corals, clonal kasi sila, and when they clone, they form colonies. So, meaning, yung mga corals na nakikita natin sa ilalim ng tubig, hindi natin alam if that's a colony, if that's an individual organism. We don't know how many organisms are making up that patch, okay, or that colony. So, in turn, instead na population density ang ginagamit natin for corals, throwback lang dun sa isang exercise natin sa lab, kaya tayo gumagamit ng coral cover. So for colony-forming organisms, instead of population density, we use cover. So merong coral cover, merong forest cover, maraming iba't ibang organisms na instead of population density, cover ang ginagamit. So thank you for that. My next question for the next possible class participation point, what processes, anong mga relationships across different organisms lead to these different kinds of dispersion? So merong uniform dispersion para silang pinila equal in distances ng isa't isa. Merong random dispersion, pero meron ding clump dispersion. So if you remember from, again, the pre-recorded lecture, ano kayang interactions with organisms ang nag-lead sa ganitong uri ng dispersal? Okay? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Julia, go ahead.
Hello po, Doc. Kapag po uniform dispersion, that means that the organism have antagonistic or negative reactions toward each other, thus the regular spacing po. Kapag random naman, they have neutral interactions, but this type of distribution is rarely observed po in the environment. And kapag clump, that is because there is a limited distribution of the resources, and the individuals or organisms have positive interactions with each other. That's why they clump into one space.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Julia. So, Julia also gets class participation points for today. So, for this one, i-reiterate ko lang yung sinasabi ni Julia. Both uniform and clumped dispersion is seen in ecosystems with limited resources. So, uniform yung dispersion pag nagko-compete yung mga organisms at therefore antagonistic, magkakaaway sila. Whereas clumped yung dispersion, meron silang attraction sa isa't isa, positive yung relationship nila sa isa't isa. Pero yun nga, limited yung resources, so they have the tendency to clump or be attracted to locations kung saan mas marami yung resource na kailangan. Ang random dispersion ay neutral, and kaya siya sinabi ni Julia na rare kasi rare yung ecosystem, if not, hindi siya, non-existent siya, na parang infinite yung resources, so walang masyadong competition. So dahil ganun, kahit saan pwede kang tumira, kahit saan pwede kang tumabi. Pero nangyayari lang to usually at the very early stages of population development. Baka kakapunta pa lang nila sa lugar na yon, o kaya merong nag-grow na resource na all of a sudden dumami. So kadalasan, ang nakikita natin is either uniform or clumped dispersion. And again, we usually see that because of antagonistic or attractive forces due to limited resources. Okay. However, tung uri ng dispersion na to ay pwedeng magbago depende sa scale. So when we say scale, naka-zoom in or naka-zoom out ba tayo? Are we talking about meters or kilometers? So how does scale affect ecology? Bakit napaka-importante na sinasabi natin kung ano yung scale ng pinag-aaralan natin pag nagde-describe ng data sa ecology? Okay, anyone? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Sheena, go ahead.
I think po scale affects ecology by how we interpret the dispersion. Kunwari po, sa Philippine map, when we, kunwari tinitingnan lang po natin is Metro Manila, we can interpret it as random dispersion. But if we shift naman the perspective into like, sa Luzon, parang iiba naman po yung dispersion. Kunwari, clump na po. Ganun. Ayun po.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Sheena. So Sheena gets class participation points for today. So, minsan pag lumapit or lumayo ka sa isang population, nag-iiba yung patterns. Ang pinaka-obvious yung dispersion. So, for example, pwedeng yung population mukhang clumped siya sa malayo, pero pag nag-zoom in ka within that clump, random pala yung dispersion. O kaya sa malayo, mukhang random, pero pag nag-zoom in ka, ay okay, fixed pala siya yung distance. So, napaka-importante ng pag-indicate ng scale pag nire-report natin yung data, kasi something that might be true pag zoomed in ka will not be obvious or will not be applicable pag naka-zoom out. And the same is true for life expectancies. Yung life expectancy na applicable sa isang barangay, pwedeng hindi na siya applicable pag buong city or buong region na yung nakikita natin. And the same is true na yung life expectancy para sa buong Pilipinas, pwedeng hindi siya nag-a-apply pag tinignan na natin siya per region or per per sex, kung male or female. So, napaka-importante ng pag-indicate ng scale at the very start of the research para maintindihan ng mga tao na, okay, kaya ganun yung conclusion niya kasi ganito yung scale na meron siya. So, it shows us the level of generalization that we can do with the data that we have. Okay, next. Okay, so one of the exercises that Sir Al walked you through in the pre-recorded lectures is how to interpret age structure diagrams. So what you're seeing right now is an age structure diagram where it shows you which age group is most abundant in the population, with the lower portion showing 0 to 4, so that's babies, and the highest would be senior citizens. So given this age structure diagram of the Philippines, of China, and of the United States, to which population should I sell diapers to? Okay, and why? So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Okay, Zell, go ahead.
Hi, Badok. And I think the population we should sell diapers to is the Philippines po, since a greater proportion or most of the citizens in the Philippines are within the age group that uses baby diapers po. So it's 0 to 4 and then maybe 5 to 9 po.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Zell. So apart from what Zell has mentioned, so Zell also has class participation points for today. So apart from looking at, well, una isipin niyo muna sinong gagamit ng diaper. Ang pinakamalaking market ng diaper ay mga babies, so that's 0 to 4. But apart from looking at aling population ba yung may pinakamaraming 0 to 4, kailangan marunong din kayong gumamit ng age structure diagram para ma-predict kung nag-expand or nagko-contract ba yung population. So usually, pag ang shape ng age structure diagram nyo is katulad ng sa Philippines, ang ibig sabihin niya, sorry, may kumakatok, wait lang. Pagbuksan ko lang po. Okay, I'm back. So where was I? Okay. So shapes ng age structure diagram. So pagkatulad nung sa Philippines, yun yung pyramid shape, ang tawag dyan expansive na age structure diagram. Malapad yung base, rapidly nagnanarrow sa taas. So this indicates high birth rate, high death rate, at may iksing life expectancy. So typically makikita niyo siya sa developing countries. So this implies rapid population growth, maraming bata, there's a large proportion of young people na pumapasok sa reproductive age, which means the population will continue to grow even if birth rates decline slightly. So gusto nating magbenta ng diaper sa ganung klaseng population. Okay? So yun. Pero paano naman kung gusto kong magbenta ng life insurance? Kaninong country ako magbebenta? Sa Philippines, sa China, or sa United States? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Go ahead, Mr. Sambua.
I think po na it should be maybe wait, sorry. I think po United States, since the amount of middle age to parang the older age people are within are a lot po. So you could start selling life insurance to people at around maybe 20 to 24 up until the 85 to 89. So that's why I think United States po.
Okay, so I think Carlo has a good point. So selling life insurance would be good to a population that has a large working age population, which is 25 to 54. This marks the population with a stable income, also financial literacy, tsaka growing interest in protecting family and assets. So pagdating sa ganyan, makikita natin siya usually sa bell-shaped or stationary na life table. Yan nga yung makikita nyo sa United States. So, mukha siyang bell. Ding, ding, dong, ding, dong. Ganun. So, makikita nyo na yung base saka middle portions are fairly equal in width. And yung top, nagnanarrow siya ng konti. So, this indicates stable birth and death rates. And developed countries with access to healthcare and education, sila yung usual na may ganyan. So, ang implication nito would be stable population growth, and the number of people in each age group remains relatively constant over time. Okay. So, tama no, Carlo Sambua, you were the one who recited?
Yes po, Doc.
Okay, noting it for class participation. Thank you. Okay, one more question. How about kanino ako magbebenta ng college education plans to? So para lang clear sa lahat, ang college education plan ay binibili ng mga magulang pagkapanganak ng bata para meron na silang konting savings para makapag-college kayo. So sino kaya ang pwede kong bentahan ito? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Christine, go ahead.
Miss, try lang po. I think po Philippines kasi po parang yung large population po sa younger age po, which tapos parang may high birth rate, so parang it's possible po na madami pong parents po na likely to plan po for their future education.
Okay, thank you for that,
Yun lang po.
Christine. Okay, yeah, I agree with Christine. The pyramid shape of the Philippines is best for college education plans kasi very high birth rates, ibig sabihin maraming young children na pinapanganak. So young or new parents who are motivated to invest in their children's future, especially as education becomes more competitive, marami sila dyan. So marami kang target buyer. So dahil doon, Philippines. Pero, paano naman yung China? Bakit walang pumapansin sa China? So, yung shape na yan na nakikita natin sa China is what we call an urn shape or constrictive age structure diagram. It has a narrow base, a wider middle, and a tapering top. So, ang ibig sabihin nito, low birth rate, low death rate, pero meron kang aging population. So, kadalasan makikita natin siya sa highly developed countries na merong mga long life expectancy and shrinking youth populations. So, ang ibig sabihin nito, yung population decline, pwede siyang mangyari in the long term. And then, at the same time, a large aging population could also lead to labor shortages and increased demand for healthcare and also pension. So medyo stressful ang kanilang economy. Okay, so we have five minutes left. This is supposed to be for class participation also, but let me just walk you through one more set of computations that you will need for Module 3. Although yung mga susunod nating meetings, marami pa rin yung computation. So another form of computation that you'll need is to compute for effective population size. And usually, ang binibigay dyan is yung number of individuals in the population, sex ratio, and how many of the individuals are breeding. So in this case, ang population size natin or number of individuals is 500. We have a 50-50 sex ratio and all individuals are breeding. So, para ma-compute natin ang effective population size, kailangan malaman natin yung dami ng males at dami ng females na nagbi-breed. So NM equals population size times ratio of males. So 500 nga daw kasi yung total. So 500 times 0.5 kasi 50-50. Ibig sabihin 250 males ang nagbi-breed. 500 times 0.5, 250 females ang nagbi-breed. So we compute it using the formula, effective population size equals 4 times N sub M times N sub F, all divided by N sub M plus N sub F. So ibig sabihin, 4 times 250 times 250, which is malaking number, all divided by 250 plus 250, that would be 500. So this means 500 out of 500, 100% nung population ay nagbi-breed. So ang effective population talaga nila ay 500. Kasi when we say effective population size, we're only referring to individuals na naggigawa ng babies. So, bigay tayo ng ibang situation. So 500 per new individuals, ang sex ratio natin is 9:1, female to male, all individuals breeding. Paano natin siya gagawin? So again, alamin natin yung N sub M, dami ng lalaki na nagbi-breed. So 500 times 0.1, kasi 1 out of 10, equals 50. So 500 times 0.9, kasi 9 yung female, so 450. So gamitin natin yung formula, 4 times 50 times 450, all divided by 50 plus 450, makikita natin na 180 or 36% lang ng population ang gumagawa ng anak. So, napaka-importante rin na malaman natin kung ilang porsyento ng isang population ang gumagawa ng babies kasi it affects the diversity, the risk for genetic drift, inbreeding risk, adaptability to change, and most importantly, extinction risk. So makikita nyo na pag ang effective population size ay sobrang liit, less than 10%, mababa ang genetic diversity, mataas ang genetic risk, etc., etc., very high ang extinction risk. So screen cap nito ha, useful to for the exam. Pag medium ang effective population size, moderate ang extinction risk, pero kung maraming nagre-reproduce, low ang extinction risk. Okay? So it's almost 10:30. We have 1 minute. Any pahabol na questions or points of clarification before I close today's session to ask you to look for a place with good internet connection and take the quiz? Okay, so kung wala na po, that's it for today. Good luck with your first quiz. And I will see you all on Thursday for our face-to-face session on the third module. Good luck mga anak!